Imagine this. It's the dead of winter. The year is 1242. You're trapped inside a cold stone fortress somewhere deep in Eastern Europe. Outside, the Mongol army circles like a pack of wolves, patient and hungry. They're not in a rush because they know the cold will do the killing for them. Your breath hangs in the air like white smoke. The wind slices through every crack in the wall, carrying the sting of snow and the taste of rust. The woodpile is down to the last few logs and building a big fire. Forget it. One trail of smoke, and you've just told the enemy exactly where you are. You pull your cloak tighter, feeling the chill sink deep into your bones. In moments like this, survival isn't about swords or shields. It's about heat. And in the Middle Ages, heat meant life. But how do you keep it when there's nothing left to burn? Winter sieges were a different kind of battlefield. The enemy wasn't just out there beyond the walls. It was in the air. You breathed in the stone under your feet. Cold could break an army faster than any sword. Inside the fortress wood was gold. Blankets were worth more than silver, and every ember was guarded like treasure. Once the gates closed, no supplies came in. No firewood, no food, just what you had when the siege began. In some castles, people burned furniture, tore doors from their hinges, even ripped up floorboards just to keep the hearth alive. Others turned to tricks that didn't need fuel at all, methods passed down like family heirlooms. When you're trapped and the world outside is nothing but snow and steel, staying warm isn't comfort. It's survival. And in the Middle Ages, survival meant getting creative or freezing to death. When winter wrapped its icy fingers around a besieged castle, warmth had to come from more than just the hearth. Some defenders had a clever secret one hidden in the very bones of their walls. In certain castles and fortified towns, masons built not one but two walls side by side. Between them, they left a narrow gap just wide enough for a man's hand. That space wasn't left empty. It was packed layer by layer with heavy, dense material, sand, gravel, rubble, even broken pieces of old brick. Picture it, the first wall of rough-cut stone, cold and gray. A gap. Then another wall sealing it in. The masons worked slowly, shoveling in the fill, tamping it down until there was no air left. Why? Because this fill acted like a giant heat battery. During the day, fire, sunlight, and even the body heat of people inside would seep into the stone and the packed core. At night, that stored warmth would slowly bleed back into the rooms, softening the bite of the cold. Historical records from 13th century fortresses in France, Poland, and the Baltic states describe walls up to 6 or 8 feet thick. Some chronicles note that during long sieges, when firewood was almost gone, these walls kept chambers just warm enough for survival. And it wasn't just about comfort. In siege warfare, big fires meant smoke. Smoke could choke the air in crowded halls or reveal your position to the enemy. A wall that stored and released heat quietly was a lifesaver. The principle still works today. Modern builders call it thermal mass insulation. You don't need medieval stone blocks, just two walls with a dense core. Bricks, cob, adobe, or even bags of sand will do the job. The trick is simple trap heat when you can and let it go when you need it most. That's how medieval builders turned cold stone into a silent, steady heater, one that never burned a single log. Beneath the stone floors of some medieval strongholds, warmth didn't roar from a blazing hearth. It crept up quietly, hidden in the shadows below. This was the defender's silent weapon against the cold. The system was called a hypocaust. Imagine a maze of low tunnels built just under the floors, supported by small stone pillars. At one end, a furnace burned hot, often in a separate room or courtyard to keep smoke away. The hot air and smoke from that fire would rush into the tunnels, snaking under the floors before escaping through a chimney on the far side. As the air passed through it, heated the floor stones above. Those stones, thick and dense, would hold the heat for hours, even after the fire burned down. Rooms stayed warmer, and the heat spread evenly. No need to crowd around a single hearth. Historical accounts from Roman times describe hypocausts in bathhouses, but during the Middle Ages, they were adapted for castles and monasteries. In 12th century Poland and parts of the Teutonic Order's fortresses, hypocausts kept council rooms and chapels warm through long, bitter winters. During sieges, they allowed a garrison to conserve fuel, fewer fires, less smoke, and less chance of alerting the enemy. There was another advantage. With the furnace located away from the main living quarters, defenders could use lower quality fuel, peat damp wood, even animal dung without choking the air inside. The smoke would vent far from where people slept or ate. The principle still works today. Modern off-grid builders use rocket mass heaters and underfloor flue systems that work on the same concept: heat a dense mass, then let it radiate slowly. In a siege, the hypocaust was more than clever engineering. It was a way to turn the cold ground itself into a weapon, one that fought back against winter without a single sword being drawn. When the siege dragged on and winter dug its claws in, you couldn't just throw another log on the fire. Fuel was precious. Every stick mattered, so medieval defenders found warmth in something simple: straw and mud. Here's the old trick they relied on. Peasants and soldiers gathered armfuls of dry straw, golden light, and crackling in the cold air. They spread it out on the ground, then pressed a thin layer of wet clay or mud over it. The mixture was packed into rough mats, sometimes as thick as a man's wrist. Once dry, these blankets were hung against stone walls draped over doorways, or even layered under bedding. The straw trapped pockets of warm air. The mud sealed the gaps, blocked drafts, and added weight, so the mat stayed in place. Sometimes the outer layer was kept slightly damp, so if a flaming arrow hit, it wouldn't catch fire easily. Historical accounts from 12th century fortresses in Eastern Europe mention using straw and mud panels to keep wind from whistling through tower walls. A chronicle from the Siege of Novgorod 1240 tells of defenders lining their sleeping quarters with panels of chaff and clay to hold in the heat. In practice, these mats acted like primitive insulation. During the day, they soaked up warmth from fires or sunlight streaming through arrow slits. At night, they slowed the escape of heat, making rooms feel less like ice boxes. For modern preppers or bushcrafters, the concept still works. Replace the mud with tarp or canvas for a cleaner, reusable version. Straw leaves or even shredded cloth can be stuffed inside. Hang the panels against the coldest walls, or use them to block wind from your shelter's entrance. It's not glamorous. It's not high-tech. But when you're facing a long winter night with no steady supply of fuel, a wall of straw and mud can be the difference between waking up shivering and waking up ready to fight another day. When the wind howled through the battlements and the frost bit at your nose, sometimes survival came down to one simple truth: stay close, stay alive. Medieval defenders called it many things, but the idea was the same. Gather everyone into a single enclosed space, seal it tight, and let human heat do the rest. In a siege, when firewood was running low, this could mean the difference between frostbite and seeing the sunrise. Picture it: a stone hall, deep inside the keep the thickest walls and the smallest windows. Straw was piled thick on the floor. Heavy woolen tapestries hung along the walls to block drafts. The air was still and heavy, with the scent of smoke sweat and damp wool. By crowding people together, soldiers, families, even animals, the room became its own heater. Every body gave off warmth, and with nowhere for it to escape, the temperature slowly climbed. It wasn't cozy, but it was survivable. Historical accounts from the siege of Harlech Castle in the 15th century described garrisons sleeping in shifts in 1 or 2 chambers, rotating between guard duty and rest. Livestock were sometimes brought indoors not just for safety, but because their body heat could warm the air a few degrees. In the dead of winter, those few degrees could save lives. It was also a defensive choice. Fewer fires meant less fuel burned and less smoke rising for the enemy to see. The garrison could stretch supplies longer, buying precious time for relief forces to arrive. Today, the principle is still used in survival scenarios. Preppers call it heat pooling. If the power's out and the cold's creeping in, seal off one small room. Bring in sleeping bags, blankets, even pets. The goal is the same as it was 600 years ago. Trap every bit of warmth you can and keep it close. In the Middle Ages, they didn't have central heating. They had each other. And sometimes that was enough to hold out until help came. Siege warfare in the Middle Ages was brutal. Cold wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a weapon. And yet, from double walls packed with stone to heated rocks carried into bed, these people found ways to turn the tide. They didn't just survive the winter, they outlasted it. They made every ember, every scrap of warmth count. And here's the thing, you can still use these tricks today. Whether you're off-grid, stuck in a blackout, or just want to be ready for whatever comes, these old methods still work. They're quiet. They're simple. They're proven by centuries of hard winters and harder wars. So the next time the wind howls outside your door, remember you've got 600 years of survival know-how at your back. If you want to learn more medieval survival tricks, ones you can actually use in your own prepping, make sure to hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and share it with someone who might need it. History isn't just in books. Sometimes it's the difference between freezing and making it to morning.